I want to welcome you to this, our 2012 annual luncheon and report to the community. We are so delighted to have all of you here with us today. And I want to extend a special welcome to the Honorable Eric Holder, Jr., United States Attorney General, who has honored us here with his presence. This is our annual celebration. This is our opportunity to share with our friends our accomplishments, our struggles, our achievements of the past year. We will begin our celebration with our new, just completed video created by Glazen Creative. I hope it will give you a feel for the people we work with and the people we work for. Then I'll update you on our 106th year just passed. Our Deputy Director, Tom Malacca, will present our staff awards. And this year we have a number of board retirements. Our board president, Adrian Thompson, will recognize remarkable service in difficult times. And then capping the afternoon, we will hear from Attorney General Holder. And we promise to send you back to your own pursuit of justice by 1:30. So first, for our video, let's begin.
We can't have a true democracy unless all segments of our society have access to justice.
Regardless of religious or social justice perspectives, I think that everybody agrees on one principle, which is that regardless of wherewithal to pay, people are entitled to justice.
You start to deal with the fundamental issues of housing and safety and education, and suddenly you have people who are employable, and it levels the playing field by dealing with those legal issues for people who wouldn't otherwise have anywhere else to go.
We all have legal rights. The role we fill is to help individuals utilize their legal rights.
I don't think the community really realizes how many people cannot afford legal services, yet they are affected by the legal system.
Sometimes people ask me, how's work going? Is it busy? And really the answer for legal aid is there will always be more demand than we can serve.
We get to learn really what's happening, what people are facing, how the economic conditions impact everybody in our city.
Legal aid is important to United Way and other funders because we have consumers who are in need of housing, and it doesn't make sense for people who currently have housing to lose it when we have a resource like the Legal Aid Society who can assist people who are being threatened with eviction or foreclosure.
My husband he was working, and I've been retired. You know, work got slow and we got behind in our house payments. And we tried to work things out with the bank, and of course they didn't want to hear tell of it. If we didn't have legal aid, we would have foreclosed on our home.
Single dad, depending on the system for welfare and lifeline support. My older son had got a job, was going to move out and get going, and he then moved back in, and I was being accused of not reporting him being in or out. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I was happy for him to get a job, and then it just all snowballed and they were charging me with welfare fraud.
Receiving public benefits is a complicated matter, even for the workers and the agencies that administer the programs, and so it's considered to be highly specialized.
He was awesome from the first phone call. He just picked me up from there, as far as my spirit. And in the end, he saved the day and inspired us to restart.
It gives you such great satisfaction to help somebody. And that's what's kept me here all these years, being able to make people whole again.
I've had a long personal relationship with the Legal Aid Society. People who otherwise would not be able to cope with the system. They give them an opportunity to know when they walk into court that they have quality representation, that they're equal before the law.
What we're talking about here are basic human rights: shelter, safety, health care. The people that come to legal aid for assistance have those basic human needs at risk.
The power of legal aid is it removes the issue. It allows you to see your life in a different place, in a different way, and allows you to make some changes in your life. And through those changes, you're suddenly empowered to find a way to be a different member of your community.
Cody is my nephew. It started off with Cody's always late to class, Cody isn't completing his homework, Cody's goofing off. He was facing expulsion, and I didn't know there were laws in place to assist a child like Cody. Legal Aid went with us to the expulsion hearing. She then filed a motion saying that he had been denied his rights as a student, that this is a child who has special education needs. Had it not been for legal aid, not only educating me, but also educating Cody, he could have well been a statistic. All of my hard work, crying, screaming, going crazy paid off, and he graduated.
The goal is to allow people to be independent, productive members of society, allow people to work through their existing issues and troubles and to get back on their feet and to be able to stand on their own.
I came to legal aid in about '95. I was a single mom, or soon to be single mom with 2 children. My kids and I were at risk, and we needed help finding a way out. When I walked into legal aid that day, I was terrified, and I felt trapped. And what I got out of legal aid was a sense of empowerment and a sense of hope. I often speak of my experience with legal aid as a pivot point. It was the first time in my life where I really felt like somebody was pushing me to be a better me, and could see that there was something underneath all of the issues in my life that could be used for good. I knew that someday after law school, no matter where I ended up working, that I wanted to be involved with this agency, and it was finally showing my kids that you can set a goal, and regardless of where you start, you can end up in a very different place.
We measure the success of our work. We look at not only the legal outcomes, but also the financial impact our work has on the community. To the extent we have more resources, we can make a bigger difference in the lives of more people.
This is an organization where you can see what your money does, and where the results of your donations are walking around in the community, and where the results of your donations will in turn lead to a community that's a better Cleveland.
Thank you. This piece captures the professionalism and commitment of our staff and volunteers, and the complexity and reality of our clients' lives. These are never mere faces in the crowd. These are real people with real problems and real solutions. Mr. Williams raising his children on his own, trying to ensure that they have opportunities for their own futures. Ms. Vera working so hard to make sure that her nephew Cody gets a good education. Mr. and Mrs. Vaughn faced with losing their family home after years of hard work. And our very good friend Isla Adkins, who inspires us all. Each of them, as Isla says, is evidence of legal aid's work, walking around in the community, making our community a better place. They have been empowered by justice. And we were able to be a force of change for these clients' lives in spite of the challenging year that we've had at Legal Aid. You've read about these difficulties, a $450,000 decrease in our federal funding from the Legal Services Corporation, And because interest rates are so low, a $2.6 million decrease in our IOLTA funds, interest on lawyers' trust accounts. But in spite of this, our work for justice does not stop. Whatever our challenges, they are dwarfed by what our clients face every day. Poverty has increased 30% in Northeast Ohio. And in the last 3 years alone, we have seen a similar increase in requests for services from legal aid. Working in this environment of decreasing resources and increasing needs, we have become even more efficient. We use data smarter to understand our impact and our outcomes. We draw on reserves, and reluctantly, we cut where we must. Our work is too important to slow down. The promise and the power of the law in the lives of the poor and vulnerable are too critical and so effective that we cannot stop. Our effectiveness is apparent in the faces in those videos, and it is apparent in the data that we keep. Each year, we help 26,000 people through more than 10,000 cases. We prevent 90% of the evictions we handle. We keep more than 90% of the kids we help in school. We prevent 76% of the foreclosures we handle. And last year, we increased our clients' income and assets and decreased their debt by a combined $36 million. That's the power of justice, made real for our clients. And all of that was made possible by the hard work of our attorneys, our paralegals, and all of our staff. And I'd like to pause here to recognize my colleagues. I have the honor of working with the most talented, smart, hardworking, mission-driven people you have ever met. Would the legal aid staff please stand so we can recognize you? Our impressive outcomes are also the result of our volunteer attorneys, 1,600 of them. These lawyers are from law firms, big and small, from corporations, and from government. They are a diverse group who share in our mission to ensure justice in our community. Would all of the volunteer lawyers here today please stand so we can thank you for your work? I want to focus for a moment on this notion of, in Isla's words, legal aid as the pivot point. Some of you may recall our holiday card from last year. For it, we chose some very quiet words attributed to the Buddha that for us capture the very large promise of justice. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. The law's power is to bring peace and hope to lives that know far too little of those sweet moments. When we use this power, we do more than solve a legal problem. We bring peace to our clients' lives. We serve as the pivot point. Or in the less poetic but to-the-point headline from a 1916 story about Cleveland Legal Aid preventing a foreclosure of an immigrant family's home, Home and Happiness Saved by Legal Aid Society. Home and happiness saved. That is legal aid. Today, a century ago, a century from now. Words that bring peace. But before justice brings peace comes frustration, fear, and sleepless nights from the threats of homelessness, from the violent abuses of a spouse, from the endless runaround of a government agency denying benefits for a family in need, from the dead ends of a school system that won't respond to an aunt's pleas for her disabled nephew. These are the awful, powerless moments. Our volunteers and our staff attorneys enter our clients' lives when those lives are at a momentous crossroads. If we cannot help them, the odds are that their circumstances will continue to spiral downward. Yes, I know that does sound dramatic, but it really, really is true. We are dealing each day with overwhelming crises in the lives of our clients and their families. Very often, we can stop the spiral, help them redirect down a better path. For our clients, at their moment of crisis, the river is rushing so fast, and they have no ability to stop it. They just get slammed and pushed aside, unheard. Without intervention, the results are unhealthy kids, abandoned neighborhoods, abandoned hope. With the power of the law, we can divert that river's path, help their lives go in a better direction. In the end, legal aid's work not only resolves legal issues, but it also empowers our lives, our clients' lives, to be fully engaged in the community, to lead change. Ms. Vera says it so well in our video. Before legal aid, she had no idea that Korte had a right to a better education. After legal aid, Korte was able to take full advantage of that better education. And both he and his aunt knew, actually knew, that they had a voice, that words could bring justice and peace to their lives and to their future. But asserting rights means taking a risk. It means the possibility of losing, and frankly, losing stings. But much worse than standing up for what is right and losing is assuming that you have no rights at all, that you are absolutely excluded from the power community. That is wrong. Convincing people that they have rights and the ability to assert those rights is a big part of what legal aid is all about. Our very presence and involvement says to our clients, you are somebody. You do have rights. You may not always prevail, but you have a voice. You have power. And fortunately for our clients, we really do almost always win. We give a voice to people who are too often invisible in our culture where power and money get all the attention. The caregiver, the janitor, the restaurant server. We help them find a sense of their own power, of their dignity, of their own right-filled standing in our community. This is an experience that they can take back to their communities and their neighborhoods. Often for the first time, they see themselves as having power, that attention must be paid. Rights, dignity, justice. These words, as the Buddha said, can indeed bring peace. To put this notion in even more familiar words, peace and justice mean exactly what our own Declaration of Independence proclaimed, that all people are created equal, that they do have unalienable rights, even if you're poor. And that, in the most famous phrase of our shared American community, is what legal aid is all about. Thank you. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Tom Malacca, our Deputy Director for Advocacy, for one of the truly special moments of this annual celebration, the presentation of our staff awards. Tom?
Thank you, Colleen. You can learn more about these awards and the recipients in your program on page 2. I ask that the award recipients please stand when your name is called. The Claudia Clark Award is our first award. It's named for legal aid's director from 1919 to 1956. Mr. Clark worked to ensure consumer protection laws throughout Ohio were passed. He did this work throughout his career. Today, the Claudia Clark Award recognizes outstanding service by our staff and is presented to Katie Feldman, Lauren Gilbride, Hazel Remish, and Joe Lopez, who could not be here today. Thank you. Next, the Leadership Award, which acknowledges exceptional staff leadership, tireless efforts on behalf of our clients, and vision for legal aid. This year's recipient supervises our low-income tax clinic and is nationally recognized as a tax advocate. I proudly present this award to Susan Morgenstern. And finally, the C. Lionel Jones Lifetime Achievement Award. This award honors the legacy of our prior director, who served 37 years and inspired many of us by his dedication and commitment to this work. Today's recipient has been attorney with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland for 39 years. Currently, he's the managing attorney of our housing practice. He brings vision, insight, and devotion as he seeks equal justice in his leadership role at Legal Aid. He supervises and mentors many attorneys, new and experienced, staff, volunteers, sharing with each of them his tremendous legal skills, his compassion for the work, and his, his standards of high quality. It's truly my honor to recognize Peter Iskin and the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you, Tom. Now I am pleased to introduce the president of our board of directors, Adrian D. Thompson, to recognize our most distinguished board members who this year have concluded their terms. Adrian is a partner at Taft. He's also a member of that very distinguished group of attorneys, the Legal Aid alumni, lawyers who have been on staff at Legal Aid. In fact, it was Dave Dawson, our former deputy director, who first recruited Adrian from Ohio State. Adrian was a Legal Aid staff attorney for 3 years, and then he moved on to his very impressive career in school and university law and labor law. Adrian worked on the Cleveland desegregation case, and he later became general counsel at the Cleveland Public Schools before joining Taft. But in my book, what is most important is that Adrian provides wise counsel and is wholeheartedly committed to this organization he leads. He works every day to help us achieve our mission of justice. Adrian?
Well, good afternoon. My name is Adrian Thompson. I'm a partner at the law firm of Taft. And this year, I'm honored to serve as the president of the Legal Aid Board of Directors. My path to becoming a board member is rooted in the time I served as a legal aid staff attorney. This was a meaningful first job for me because as a young man, my family would have been eligible for legal aid services. Today, as a partner in a major Cleveland law firm, I am honored to give back. Legal aid's work for children is especially important to me and is my passion. It is critical that we recognize how deeply engaged legal aid is in making better the lives of children in Northeast Ohio. Indeed, 42% of the people we helped last year were children. That's 11,051 children. From making sure special education needs are met, to helping mothers out of abusive relationships, to making sure they and their family can keep their homes. Children are our silent and often invisible clients. I am one of a 21-member board of directors. My colleague board members all share my passion for legal aid. At this time, I would ask all my board members to stand and be recognized. Thank you. This afternoon, I am pleased to recognize and thank a remarkable cross-section of our community, 5 members of our board of directors who are retiring from Legal Aid's board after completing their 6-year terms. In fact, we'd like you to meet them and hear what they say about the importance of legal aid in their lives and in the lives of everyone in this community. So let's take another minute to watch another brief video.
As a lawyer, I've been given a lot. And at this stage of my life, I have so much I need to give back. Sitting on the board of the Legal Aid Society is an opportunity to help promote the good that society does in our community.
You don't want to lose sight of why you went to law school, and that was to help people. And I think that's what that feeling is about. I think it's a very good feeling. It's a feeling of fairness. It's a feeling of satisfaction. It's a feeling that you have done something to advance society.
This is a board that's gone through, in the 6 years that I've been on it, 2 strategic plans. They're very thoughtful and very deliberate about the work that Legal Aid does. They want to make sure that they're very tapped into the needs of the community. Legal Aid tends to be a little more nimble and tends to find themselves changing a little more quickly to meet the needs of the community because the population they serve need them to be. We have a very active and engaged board, and they're going to have a hard time getting rid of me.
Thank you. As we all know, much of the credit for our success as an organization belongs to Colleen and her leadership team and to the superb professionals and support staff who are Legal Aid. But at their backs stand a group of men and women from throughout this community who bring deep commitment, practical experience, wise counsel, and connections that help to make Legal Aid the organization that it is. I'd like to tell you a little bit about each one of our retiring board members. First, many of you know Isla Atkins as my immediate predecessor as board president. And you also know that she has the historic distinction of being our first board president, who is also a former client of Legal Aid. You heard Isla's story in the video. Her story epitomizes the powerful impact legal aid can have on our clients' lives, well beyond the particular legal matter that brings them to legal aid. Isla brought her unlimited energy, her insightfulness, and her no-nonsense style to her board leadership. Her business sense, combined with her commitment to justice, made her a perfect leader. She kept us on track, focused on our mission. Marc Bennett is an assistant U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. Marc has connected us with key people in the state legislature, government agencies, and other organizations. He has helped us build partnerships to better serve our clients. Marc has also helped us develop pro bono programs for government attorneys, thus expanding our vital volunteer efforts. Because of Marc's wise counsel, we better develop systems to track our outcomes, survey our clients and volunteers, and gather and analyze data to ensure we hold ourselves accountable for every dollar and every hour we spend. His counsel has made us stronger. Next, I'm pleased to recognize Kathy Korte, who has been at the heart of numerous major human resources projects over the past 6 years. Kathy is an employment lawyer and in-house counsel. As chair of Legal Aid's Personnel Committee, she has helped Legal Aid ensure we are an organization that supports our amazing staff. Kathy has led a total overhaul of our salary structure, inaugurated a staff evaluation system, developed a new succession planning program, and led a complete rewrite of our personnel manual. Needless to say, her leadership has been very, very appreciated. Turning to another former board president, Rich Panza. In his other life, Rich is a partner at Wickens, Herzer, Panza, Cook, and Batista. Rich, too, is among the distinguished Legal Aid alumni. Rich interned at Legal Aid throughout law school. Rich is a gifted speaker at small events and large. He has told Legal Aid's story in countless settings, and his commitment to legal aid is infectious. Rich has been a high-energy board member. His commitment, caring, good judgment, and drive are the defining qualities of Legal Aid and our board. He has set a standard we all try to live up to. And last but not least, Congressman Lou Stokes, a true hero in Northeast Ohio, but we all know that. Congressman Stokes, who was counsel at Squire Sanders, has worked with Legal Aid his entire legal career. He co-counseled cases with Legal Aid when he first began practicing law, and he has continued that partnership. Congressman Stokes has been indispensable in helping us educate our federal congressional delegation about legal aid. Through these relationships, we are helping each other better serve Northeast Ohio. It is indeed a powerful statement to the community when Lou Stokes wholeheartedly supports our organization. As we all know, when Lou speaks, everyone listens. We have quite a group of directors. We will miss him, but believe me, their service to legal aid will be paying dividends for many, many years to come. Isla, Marc, Kathy, Rich, and Congressman Stokes, would you please stand so we can all show our appreciation for your dedication to justice. Thank you all again. Now it is my distinct honor to introduce United States Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio, Stephen M. Dettelbach. He will in turn welcome Attorney General Holder. Steve, oh, just a minute, I'm not done. I have to, Steve attended Dartmouth College and Harvard Law. In 2009, President Barack Obama nominated Steve to be the U.S. Attorney, and the Senate unanimously confirmed his nomination. He's a former partner at Baker Hostetler and former counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee. He served for more than 12 years as a federal prosecutor. One case Steve often talks about is his victory in 1995 when he won convictions in what was, at the time, the largest human trafficking case ever brought in the United States. 70 Thai women were imprisoned in a garment factory in California, forced to live there and work there against their will. It is that passion for justice that defines Steve's leadership. He has brought the U.S. Attorney's Office to the people. His office has prosecuted those engaged in predatory lending, leaving in their wake devastated families and neighborhoods. He has sought out and developed partnerships with nonprofits and community organizations, bringing indictments and lawsuits when appropriate, bringing people together to solve community problems whenever possible. He is a true leader for justice. Steve is a public servant in the truest and proudest sense of that title. At Legal Aid, we are honored to call Steve our partner and our friend. Steve.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Adrian. I also want to thank Colleen, your wonderful executive director, and the entire staff at Legal Aid and your board for your tireless work to protect the most vulnerable in our society. And in that way, of course, the Department of Justice, where I work, and the Legal Aid Society have much in common. Like Legal Aid, although we spell justice with a capital J in our name, we seek to make justice with a small j a reality through our work. It is not surprising, then, that over these last years, our offices have worked together in so many ways. We have staffed your wonderful brief advice clinics, where this U.S. attorney actually got to prove that he was still an actual attorney. We have shared Assistant United States Attorney Marc Bennett, who has served with distinction along with Congressman Stokes over the last 6 years on your board. And we have made joint efforts to deal with the housing and foreclosure crisis that has crippled our community. Perhaps nowhere is our common interest so strong than in protecting ordinary consumers against fraud. Our offices have collaborated in efforts to both warn and protect victims, and I'm glad to announce here today that we are doing so again in the near future by co-sponsoring with Legal Aid, the Federal Trade Commission, the State Attorney General, and the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, an open regional summit called Protecting Main Street Against Fraud. The event, which is part of the Attorney General Investor Fraud Initiative, is free and open to the public, and it will be held on the morning of October 11th, and there are flyers at the door. Boss, you see I got that plug in. And speaking of my boss, the United States Attorney General. You know, I first met Attorney General Holder in 2009 when he interviewed me for my job. And I will tell you that walking into the incredible Attorney General's conference room as a tourist might be great, but when you're going there for a one-on-one interview with the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer in the United States of America, it can be a tiny little bit unsettling. But since then, for the last 3 years, I have been truly privileged to have been led by Attorney General Holder, and indeed watching him work up close, looking at his commitment and his sacrifice, I have learned myself a lot about what it truly means to be a leader. You know, so many people these days act as if leadership is about being the most popular or the most powerful, and sometimes even just the loudest. But I have learned by watching Attorney General Holder these years that leadership isn't about any of those things. Leadership is about being there. Leadership is about standing up for people in need. And again and again and again, Eric Holder has been there. Eric Holder has stood up. Eric Holder has stood up for the Department of Justice's own dedicated employees. You know, in the midst of the Cuyahoga County corruption case, as an old public corruption prosecutor himself, Eric Holder was there to rally and praise the team. As busy as he is, he stood up and he picked up the phone, not to call me, but to call the people, the real heroes who made this case, the prosecutors and the agents who sacrificed the better part of 5 years to clean up our county. And that's no surprise, because Eric Holder has stood up for so many others in their time of need. Eric Holder has stood up for the police when public safety forces were under attack, when police officers were being laid off and gunned down in record numbers. Eric Holder was there to lead. He stood up for the police. He pushed against cuts in the COPS program, including millions of dollars of funding for our own Cleveland Police Department, and then he mandated a national officer safety program in every United States Attorney's office in the country. Eric Holder has also stood up for fairness. When we were faced with an unfair sentencing system that punished dealing powder cocaine one way and crack cocaine in a different way, Eric Holder was there to lead. He stood up and led a bipartisan effort to correct those disparities. And think of that. The head prosecutor talking not just about longer sentences, but about fairer sentences. Eric Holder has also stood up against intolerance. When Sikh, Arab, and Muslims in our country faced hate and violence, as have so many other groups in our history, Eric Holder was there to lead. He stood up for the idea that security and liberty are not at odds, but instead are mutually supportive goals. And he pushed us in the Department of Justice to prioritize national security and civil rights, and to engage with all Americans to make sure that they were being included in our great national tapestry. Eric Holder has also stood up for children. Based on his many years as a local law enforcement leader and a judge, the Attorney General knew that children often get caught up in a cycle of violence, and knowing that, Eric Holder was there to lead. He stood up for an approach that wasn't based on easy lock-em-up slogans, but on crime prevention, both founding and then funding his Defending Childhood initiative, including, by the way, providing $2 million to help Cuyahoga County's children. In fact, just today, he announced a new 211 number that will help break the vicious cycle of violence and keeps kids in school and out of prison. Now, I've learned from watching the Attorney General that these things are not always easy and they're not always popular, but they are what a true leader does. Whether it was fighting against corruption, regardless of party, or for police, regardless of tough budgets, whether it was speaking up to help children who have no voice, or fighting for just sentences as the credible voice of fairness, Eric Holder has led. Again and again and again, Eric Holder has been there. Over and over, he has stood up, regardless of the popularity of an issue, but because it was just. And now, Eric Holder is not there. Eric Holder is here. And now, my good friends in the Cleveland legal community, it is our opportunity to stand up for him, for not just my boss, but my leader, the 82nd Attorney General of the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, Eric H. Holder, Jr.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Steve, for those kind words. The fact that he described me as an old public corruption prosecutor, though, I thought was former would have been better. I think that's right. But I also want to thank Steve for his outstanding service as United States Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio, and for his clear commitment not only to advancing the work of our nation's Justice Department, but also to strengthening our entire justice system. It is a privilege to stand with him today and to be back here in Ohio. It's also a pleasure to be among so many friends and partners as we discuss our common goal and our shared responsibility to help fulfill our nation's founding and enduring promise of equal opportunity for every citizen and equal justice under law. Now, making good on this promise is precisely what inspired the creation of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland more than a century ago. Today, as we celebrate so many decades of progress and as we congratulate this year's awards winners, I'd like to thank President Thompson and his outstanding team, including Executive Director Colleen Cotter, for all you've done to organize this important event and for your ongoing efforts to ensure that quality legal representation is available, affordable, and accessible to every American. On behalf of the entire Justice Department, I'm grateful for the chance to salute the remarkable contributions made by each of today's honorees and by every member of your board of directors who over the course of their 6-year terms have worked tirelessly to extend our country's finest traditions of public service by helping to safeguard essential rights, to restore dignity to those in need of assistance, and to promote justice for underserved and underprivileged communities throughout Northeast Ohio. I also want to thank the many leaders and advocates here today, including Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor of the Ohio Supreme Court and Tim Young, Vice Chair and soon-to-be Chair of the American Council of Chief Defenders and current Director of the Office of the Ohio Public Defender, whose leadership and service have informed and have strengthened the Justice Department's work to improve the delivery and the availability of legal services here in this region and nationwide. Your efforts have helped to empower the most vulnerable among us and brought hope and much-needed help to those struggling to afford civil legal representation. And your achievements give me great confidence in our ability to close the current justice gap, to build a more fair, more just, and more equitable society, and to expand the reach and the impact of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. In so many different ways, this organization, along with its ever-expanding network of partners, has been instrumental in improving lives and bringing positive change to communities across the city. Whenever neighbors in need have come forward, seeking assistance and counsel, your dedicated staff attorneys and volunteers have stepped up to answer the call, whether by offering valuable advice and representation for an individual facing a home foreclosure or a client facing a child custody hearing, by supporting victims of domestic violence or taking a stand against predatory and unfair lending practices. Your volunteers and staff, with the generous support of the private bar, have made a life-changing and sometimes a life-saving difference. You've also proven that legal aid doesn't just open doors to our justice system, it provides a critical reinvestment in the community. Your work saves precious taxpayer dollars by protecting patients' health, increasing access to public benefits, keeping families together, reducing domestic violence, and offering indigent citizens a way out of poverty. And this economic benefit is more important than ever before, as so many of us at every level of government and across both the nonprofit and private sectors have struggled to meet constantly growing demands with increasingly limited budgets. However, despite significant financial challenges, the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland has continued to make really remarkable progress. Last year alone, your organization assisted more than 26,000 people in Northeast Ohio in over 10,000 different cases. But of course, for every client accepted for civil legal aid, many others must be turned away. In fact, a recent study showed that in America today, nearly 80% of civil legal needs currently go unmet. This is unacceptable. Many of us have witnessed this reality firsthand, and we've seen the heartbreaking stories behind the latest statistics. During my service as a judge on the D.C. Superior Court, and later as the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, I came to understand that the fundamental integrity of our justice system and its ability to deliver fair outcomes will always depend on our willingness to ensure effective representation and resources on both sides of the courtroom. Throughout my career, I also learned a great deal about the challenges facing indigent criminal defendants, and this is why, as Attorney General, I'm determined to direct every available resource to address the growing legal aid crisis, to find and to implement effective solutions, and to enlist new partners in the work of improving our ability to serve those in desperate need of access to quality representation and civil legal services. 2 years ago, I had the honor of joining with my colleagues to take bold, unprecedented action in addressing our indigent defense crisis. Now, as many of you know, in 2010, the Justice Department took the historic step of launching a new component known as the Access to Justice Initiative. And that's to bring together stakeholders and experts at all levels to improve both the civil and criminal justice systems. Now, many of you are working closely with this office, and you've helped to enhance and to extend our outreach efforts. And while I'm extremely proud of what the Access to Justice Initiative is helping to accomplish, this work is not relegated to a single office. So long as I have the distinct privilege of serving as Attorney General, expanding access to legal services will be a department-wide priority. This is a key focus area for every United States Attorney's Office. And over the last 3 years, through our Office of Justice programs, we've helped to advance indigent defense efforts by supporting programs and partnerships that help educate, train, and equip lawyers to work in public defender offices and to mobilize members of the private bar to provide civil legal aid. Now, by engaging local leaders, as well as our federal, state, local, and tribal government counterparts, the Department's Bureau of Justice Assistance also has provided direct support to programs aimed at improving the delivery of legal services for the poor, identifying best practices, increasing access to counsel at the earliest stages of legal proceedings, and expanding oversight of those who provide this assistance. Earlier this year, BJA awarded nearly $1.3 million in grants for researching sustainable and evidence-based ways to address nationwide deficiencies. Now, just 2 days ago, the National Institute of Justice announced $1.6 million in grants to examine policies and practices on indigent criminal defense. And already such investments and the collaborative approaches that they're supporting are paying dividends. But with more than 50 million Americans eligible for federally funded legal aid and only a fraction of U.S. households with access to it, the harsh reality is that in the vast majority of cases, civil legal aspects of problems involving housing, finance, employment, public benefits, the care and custody of minor children and dependent adults, and personal and neighborhood safety continue to go unaddressed. And that's why each one of us must remain committed to this work. And I want to assure you that my colleagues and I recognize the importance of leading by example. Just as many of you have worked to grow pro bono initiatives at your firms and at your corporations, I'm pleased to report that the federal government's own pro bono program has expanded its reach and encouraged all agency counterparts to adopt policies and help navigate internal restrictions to make it easier for our attorneys to answer the call to help those in need. Right here in Cleveland, your board member and our Assistant United States Attorney, Marc Bennett, has emerged as an exemplary leader in developing opportunities for government attorneys to serve less fortunate citizens across Northeast Ohio. And we're proud of the example that he has set, and we are determined to continue and to strengthen this important work. Of course, I don't expect that making the progress that we need or obtaining the results that the American people deserve will be easy. History has proven that it won't be. After all, nearly a half century after the Supreme Court handed down its landmark decision in Gideon versus Wainwright, guaranteeing criminal defendants the right to be provided with legal counsel even if they cannot afford an attorney. Even 50 years later, we still have that problem. Thanks to scores of courageous and compassionate leaders, we've come a long way over that last half century, and we are continuing to make tremendous progress in achieving this ideal. But despite the promise of Gideon, the basic rights guaranteed almost 5 decades ago have yet to be fully realized. And there remains no guaranteed right to counsel in the civil context. Unfortunately, the day has not yet arrived when all of our citizens can access legal help without having to wait, without having to sacrifice, without having to worry. This is unconscionable. And to all Americans, it must be viewed as unacceptable. This means that your work is more relevant and it's more important than ever before. Yes, we have much to do, but today as I look out over this crowd of passionate advocates and dedicated partners, I can't help but feel confident in our ability to build on the momentum that's already been established. Because of you, I'm really optimistic about the future that together we will help to create. And I'm certain that this future is not beyond our reach. So once again, I'd like to thank today's awardees for their extraordinary contributions and all of your retiring board members for their remarkable service. I'm grateful for the chance to join you in celebrating all that the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland has accomplished. And like all of you, I look forward to everything that we can and surely will achieve together in the days ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney General. And as a token of our appreciation, we have a little something for your office, that conference room that Steve described. Hopefully this can adorn it. Thank you again for everyone for coming. Have a terrific day, and thanks again.